Today, we're getting under the hood of Keisha Hickson, a mother, daughter, sister, professional speaker, thought leader, and a passionate advocate for resilience, transformation, and women's empowerment. Her personal journey has been marked by a diagnosis of multiple myeloma and a challenging prognosis, which has fueled her pursuit of a limitless legacy. She firmly believes in living life on your own terms, creating a narrative that leaves a lasting and meaningful impact beyond conventional boundaries. With 25 years of experience in the financial industry, she's held roles of up to vice president and senior branch manager in wealth management. Over the years, she's managed strategic initiatives overseeing deposits of over $500 million and assets worth $275 million. Her expertise, supported by Series 6 and 63 licensees, as well as life and health insurance qualifications, has been instrumental in her transition from corporate success to empowering others. Despite facing a rare incurable cancer with a prognosis of 3 to 5 years, she chose to view this life-altering moment as an opportunity for profound personal change. She offers a unique perspective on confronting complacency and adversity, redefining one's narrative, and fully embracing life. Wow. Welcome, Keisha.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
So if it's okay, I'd love to get going. So this is a question I've asked every woman, and it's slightly different based on who I'm speaking with, but what was your inflection point? I mean, you spent 25 years in the financial industry. What got you into health and wellness? And tell us a little bit about your journey.
As you stated, I was in banking for 26 years. That was my profession. But what was the pivotal moment for me started in 2016 in January. I suffered a fall and I thought it was a minor injury of the elbow. I kind of hit my elbow on the tile. I seeked out medical attention because my arm was hurting and I couldn't understand why it wouldn't stop hurting. And I went to see a doctor and he was like, oh, it could be a few things. I'm going to send you to get an MRI and then we'll decide the next course of action or treatment. I was like, okay, by all means. 2 days later, after the MRI, I go to his office. And this is the first time I met this doctor that Monday, which was Martin Luther King. And when I get to the office, he says to me, Keisha, I don't know you, but I know you're a straight shooter. And I have to tell you, something significantly is wrong with you. I was like, excuse me? He was like, yes, something significantly is wrong with you. I made an appointment for you to go see an oncologist at Mount Sinai on a Monday. Make sure you make the appointment. This is the doctor's information. I thought to myself, I didn't even understand the word oncologist. Like, I didn't get it. I was just like, oh, okay. So I'm kind of like in shock. So I leave and I go to work, back to work, and I call him again. I said, I'm a little confused. What exactly are you saying to me? He said, something significantly is wrong with you. Please make that appointment. Okay, I make the appointment. What I found out the next week was life-altering. After the MRI, they did a series of blood tests and it came back that I had multiple myeloma. Again, I'm at my office. This doctor calls and says, Keisha, I'm sorry, but you have multiple myeloma. I was like, okay. So I turned to my computer and I kind of was like doing a search as he's talking to me, because nowhere in the title suggests cancer, right? So as he's talking and I'm typing, what pops up? A rare incurable cancer with a life expectancy of 3 to 5 years. I felt like I was underwater at that point. And I was like, excuse me, this is what I'm reading. And this is actually what you're telling me that I have? He goes, yes, Keisha. So at that moment, to be 38 years old and to realize that I may not live to see my 44th birthday was my pivotal moment. Because up until that point, my life was the status quo, the all-American life. I had a great career. I moved to the suburbs. I had a child. Life was just moving along. Every year I made more money. I was in a sales role. Life was just great, right? Until that moment when I realized that I have a death sentence now from 3 to 5 years. So what did I do after that point? Of course, the initial shock of me having this rare incurable cancer that nobody ever heard of in my family, and it's something that I got from the environment. There was no test for it. It's not like a mammogram for it. Something has to happen for the doctor to look further into it. Because I went to the doctor every year, twice a year. Nothing showed up out of the ordinary that would suggest that this would be my fate coming down the road. So after the initial shock of it, I took it in, I met with my oncology team, and I went to treatment. But at that moment, I also made up my mind that I'm going to live. No matter what it takes, I just made my mind, I'm going to live. And whatever time I have left, I'm going to live the life that I want and leave the legacy that I want to leave. Like, how would I really be remembered? And I remember all these things coming to me, like, how would I really be remembered? Yes, I worked for the bank for so long. It was great. But that can't be the end of my story, that I spent my entire adult life here and that's it. Like, and now it's time to like spend it. Like, I call like just spend it out. Start your business, travel, love on your loved ones, stop putting things off. So because now I have to manage just critical illness, is when I became more conscious about healthcare and treatment options and others who don't have access to the same type of treatment that I have. It's when it became more conscious to me, because up until that point, I didn't have an issue. I've had health coverage since I was a child. I had great health coverage. I worked for a great company. My spouse had great health coverage. So those things were never really on my radar, because outside of regular wellness visits, it just wasn't on my radar. My daughter's perfectly healthy. Most people in my family are healthy. So that was kind of started me on the journey on health and rare cancers and rare diseases and how many people are living with critical illnesses. Like I said, it started in January of 2016. Yes, I made up my mind to live, but really I was in the fight for my life, right? I was in the fight to understand what was happening to me, understand my treatment options, because at that time, it wasn't that many treatment options for multiple myeloma, right? So since then, at least 6 or 7 drugs have been approved. And when I was diagnosed, something called the TCAR therapy was only in clinical trials. So the challenge of multiple myeloma is you become refractory or you relapse from the drug that you're on and you have to move to the next drug. So most patients run out of treatment, and that's what causes them their life to end. So it was a journey, emotionally, physically tasking, managing your stress, managing these symptoms from being on drugs a long term, right? Because the other part of multiple myeloma that people don't really realize, you're always on some type of chemo. So now I'm on what's called maintenance chemo to kind of keep the disease at bay. So I go to slow and I take a shot every 2 weeks. But there were times I would have to go to the doctor 3 times a week, still work, take care of my daughter, and all my other obligations. I don't, so, my close friends ask me all the time, how do I do it? I just had to plan for it, right? I had to just accept that this is my new normal. This is my life. So I couldn't cry about it, just figure it out. So there was many times, you cry in the shower, you have your moments of, am I going to live to see my daughter graduate from junior high school? My daughter's going to be a senior this year. And there was a time where I thought I would even live to see her graduate high school based upon statistically what you read, right? And all the blogs, and because I'm a doctor, I'm telling you, multiple myeloma, I can almost go to medical school because I've read everything from sun up to sundown. I was in the blogs, the groups, just to learn as much as I could learn about the disease, because part of my job as a patient is to be my own advocate. You have to be your own advocate when you're faced with certain things, to have educated conversations with your medical team that you understand the treatment and is the best course of treatment for you. And I've always believed that. You have to understand what's going on to make a proper decision. So it's still emotionally tasking at times, right? Like my birthday's this month. I live to see another birthday. My daughter's birthday as well is this month as well. The emotional, the stress, the only thing that I really didn't suffer was financial hardship throughout this journey, because I have great health care. Whatever wasn't paid for, I was able to pay for. So that's one aspect of my life that was not impacted, was financially. But emotionally, the stress, the fear of, if I go to get tested, is it going to show that my disease is going the opposite direction, is tasking. I can't put it no other way to you. It's a situation where sometimes when you battle a critical illness after 5 years, you don't have to think about it, but I have to think about it every day. because I can relapse at any time. I will always have the clone until they find a cure for multiple myeloma.
You use the word, and this of course has been used when it comes to dealing with diseases, but my new normal. Can you describe, and there's two things that stuck out with me. Of course, the whole story stuck out with me, but I think it would be really helpful to sort of share what your new normal looks like. It's been 8 years. You have a new normal, to your point. And then the other thing that you shared that was interesting on top of the new normal was that this is something that it's a daily sort of thing that you keep wondering what is like from a remission perspective. So if you can describe a little bit about how you see your new normal from a life perspective.
So my new normal for the past 8 years is everything I do, I have to plan it around going to the doctor. So I have to travel, I have to call the doctor and rearrange my dates. I need to come back to make sure that I don't miss my next treatment cycle. Early on, if I wanted to travel, I would have to go take a blood test before I travel to check on my white and red blood cells to make sure that I'm not open to infection. Because also one thing I didn't mention throughout this journey, in 2017, I had what's called the stem cell transplant. So the stem cell transplant is a treatment option to kill every cell in your body, to kill as many myeloma cells that they can kill. But in that process, you become de-immunized. Like it kills every cell, every antibody within your body. And the purpose of it is your body will rebuild and kill those lingering myeloma cells. So because of that, I am immunocompromised, right? Early on, I was immunocompromised. I had to be revaccinated. Like you would revaccinate an infant, I had to be revaccinated. I went on that same schedule, measles, polio, all those things. So during that time, I had to be very conscious of where I traveled to, because I couldn't think about picking up some type of disease that my body couldn't fight off. So every time I travel, I have to make sure that my white and red blood cells are in order, or I have to go take a shot of neutrophil. So everything I do, I have to think about my myeloma treatments. When I talk about always living on edge, so every month they test my myeloma markers, and that will tell them if my myeloma is on the rise or I'm still stable. And every month I do it, I log back on the next day immediately to check my myeloma markers to see if I'm still in remission, right? And you'd be like, okay, I don't have to deal with that. And to be 100% candid, I didn't really tell many people this, but last year, there was a question if I was coming out of remission based upon my biopsy. So also every year, I have to take a biopsy and a PET scan, because the biopsy is more sensitive to where the disease is going. So in 2023, last year, I took my annual biopsy. For 7 years, I never had an issue. I was always the same. Last year, the doctor called. She was like, "You're creeping in the wrong direction." She said, and then we started talking about changing my treatment plan. And I was like, I almost had like a little mental breakdown, because I live okay on my current treatment plan. I don't have many side effects. Yes, I'm tired, I'm nauseous, I have chemo brain, but I live with it. To be on a new drug and not know how I'm going to react every time kind of took me aback. So she was like, we're going to wait a few months and I'm going to retake the biopsy. Luckily, in August, the biopsy showed it went back the other way. But I'm going to tell you, for the first couple of months of last year, I did the bare minimum, because the thought of, for the first time in 7 years, I'm coming out of remission and I have to think about something else or a new drug or what my life is going to be like, was a little paralyzing. So that's when I talk about my new normal, how I have to manage being treated and test results and biopsies and PET scans. It's never ending. So that's just my new normal.
Thank you. My heart is heavy. You have become like a medical expert. When you're dealing with rare diseases, you become an expert. Another word that stuck out to me was advocacy. So you have become your own advocate for sure. You know all this stuff. How would you describe your role in this advocacy, and what are you doing beyond?
Outside of being my own advocate, over the years, one thing that I wanted to help other myeloma patients or anybody dealing with a critical illness is how to move forward, right? There's life after chemo, there's life during chemo. And that's why I share my story, right? I know it's devastating, but I really don't want the story to be more about me. I wanted to be able to instill action in others and transform them of, listen, life happens all the time. And prior to being diagnosed with multiple myeloma, there were probably other things that happened in my life that was equally as critical, but this was the one to know that my mortality now is being questioned, that just pushed me in a different direction to be stronger. So when I share my story, you mentioned to me that you have a heavy heart. It's not my intent for you to have a heavy heart. It's for me to inspire you and give you action. Like, listen, girl, things are going to happen, but you got to put a plan in place and one foot in front of the other, because life is unpredictable, but everything is temporary. You can change it, live it, figure out how to live with it, because that's what resilience is really about.
I think you make a really good point. And you're right. You can choose to look at it and say, I am going to fight this. I am going to live a life. I'm going to move forward. And these are the ways. And I love the fact that you're sharing your story in hopes to help other people suffering from the same thing or another rare disease, because I think it's both inspiring, but it also kind of gives others with tools and strategies to cope.
So this year, I formed Multiple Myeloma Matters. And what I hope to do with that is really just bring awareness to multiple myeloma, especially in the African American community, because also multiple myeloma primarily affects African American males over the age of 68. And because it's so rare and most people haven't heard about it, just to spread the word that this is a disease out here. Also to pay attention to your body, because there's no pre-screening. When you feel tired, when you're having bone pain, explore it, go to your doctor. Do not pass it off as, I'm just tired, I'm fatigued, I'm working too hard. Just not to become complacent within your health. Listen to your body, go to your annual exam, speak to your doctor. After the initial blood panel, if you feel like he needs to go deeper, say, hey, is there anything else you can check me for, because I'm still having some of these symptoms. Whether you go to the doctor once a year, twice a year, to be in tune with your physician should be in tune with you, to kind of like ask the appropriate questions and probe around if something is brewing, because there's a smoldering stage to multiple myeloma, and then it activates to full cancer, right? So just to let people understand that being an advocate for themselves all around is so important, to catch certain things earlier to help with your overall prognosis and your treatment plan. So that is my hope, to take Multiple Myeloma Matters in the future. This year, I had a very small event called Warriors and Survivors, Living Life After the Big C. Because yes, multiple myeloma is important, but so many of us are living with other type of cancers that we need support.
You had that fall, you didn't raise your hand raised itself, or your arm did. What would you say, as you go through, because something happened to you, so you reacted versus being proactive in it? Do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that is the fall definitely triggered me to have an x-ray, because the multiple myeloma is in the bone marrow, but it affects your bones because it eats away at the bones, almost like Swiss cheese. So you have these lesions. And I didn't even fall that hard. My elbow had a lesion, so it caused it to be weakened. So when I fell, it got fractured a little bit. And that's what started it. But to be 100% honest, years leading up to that, I was having night sweats, right? But I was like, oh, I'm just tired. I'm overweight. Let me exercise more and more and more. I was having night sweats, and I was really fatigued. But there's life challenges, there's marital challenges, career challenges. You just feel like you're just fatigued because you're overwhelmed. So when I look back at things that happened leading up to that and how I made some decisions and how I was feeling, I was in the smoldering stage. And I had a slight bone pain on the side of my calf. And at that time, I was spinning a lot, like spinning is an exercise, trying to lose weight. So I just attributed to, I strained something. And I didn't go any further to look into it. When I fell, and now this happened for someone who goes to the doctor often. And also, I didn't mention, I've always been under the care of a hematologist because I have a clotting factor. And my hematologist is also an oncologist. And because maybe I didn't express my symptoms enough or complain about anything normal, she didn't dig deeper to look for anything else other than my normal blood deficiency. It happened, and I had to embrace it. I'm grateful when it happened, because most times, multiple myeloma patients, when they find out something really critical happens, their organs start to shut down. They have kidney involvement, or they have because it attacks the bones in your body, and the bones in your spine are very small. So a lot of myeloma patients' backs are riddled with holes. But when most people have back pain, they just feel like I strained it or I'm a little bit overweight, let me lose weight. So for me, my spine is completely intact, which I'm grateful for. I have lesions on my brain, my kidney, on my ribs and my arms and my limbs, but my back is completely intact. For those to be the smallest bones in the body, my back is completely intact, which I'm grateful for. That's how it started, all from a simple fall.
So as you're looking and you started Multiple Myeloma Matters, what are you doing today with that? Where are you hoping you can go with that? And what do you need from people? You're speaking to an audience of women and people out in the world. What do you want to do with that?
So initially, to be honest with you, I just wanted to participate in other non-for-profits. What caused me to decide to start my own non-for-profit? Because as rare as they say multiple myeloma is, I meet people all the time that have it. So I was at a health fair for another non-for-profit for breast cancer awareness, and I decided to get a mammogram that day, just because it was part of the activities for the day. And when I got into the mammogram truck, I sat down and they're going through your medical history. And I've mentioned to them I have multiple myeloma because you're speaking to a nurse, right? They like a little triage. I have multiple myeloma. All of a sudden, the driver of the van comes and sits next to me. I found that weird. I was like, hey, how are you? And he starts whispering to me. He said, you have multiple myeloma? I said, yes. He didn't want his colleagues to know. He was like, I was diagnosed this year in February. I was like, okay. I said, so I try to whisper back because I realized he didn't want anybody to know. We kind of connected after. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to do something where people feel comfortable talking about this disease. You can't even really prevent it, so to speak, because you've been exposed to something, Lord knows when in your lifetime. And also for my friends who are breast cancer survivors and have breast cancer non-for-profits, I feel like the month of October is completely pink, which I think is great. But there are other cancers that need the same type of awareness. And there's times where I'm in spaces and they're talking about breast cancer and somebody will mention, oh, Keisha has a rare blood cancer, and I'll speak about it. And they just gloss over it. Breast cancer a lot of people are suffering from it, but there are other cancers that people are dying from every day and being diagnosed with every day. So I was like, I have to do more to keep my voice going, to let other people know that their cancers too matter. Because when you're on the outside and like breast cancer October, you feel like this is the prominent cancer gets the most awareness and you don't matter. Because that's how I feel sometimes in these meetings. Because all my friends invite me to whatever initiatives they have about cancer, because I really talk about a story of resilience. And because it's incurable and how do I live with it, they want me to tell that story and I'm happy to share it. But sometimes it comes across, well, okay, it's not that, it's like just push it to the sideline. And I don't want anyone to feel who was managing any type of critical illness that they should be pushed to the sideline, because there's stress in that also. You might have heart disease, I have cancer, it's still critical and we still need to live. And how are we going to move forward? So that's what I hope to help with Multiple Myeloma Matters, is to talk about it, but also have a community where other caretakers and other people suffering with critical illnesses can come together and share their story and be a support to one another.
So I think what you're doing is really important. And, your natural tendency is you're a born leader, but have you felt alone?
I'm not going to say that I feel alone throughout my journey, but as you mentioned, I am a natural leader. I'm a natural fixer. My entire community, my friends, my family, they look for me to be the fixer, I call it, right? And I find it hard sometimes to manage my emotions and other people's emotions. So I just kind of like handle it on my own, because battling a critical illness or going through something, I often tell my other cancer peers, your friends and family want to sympathize with you, but they don't really know what it's like to live with cancer, live with a critical illness, constantly going to treatment. Because yes, I'm sorry this happened. How can I help? Their life goes on, and you are faced with what you're faced with, and your new normal. I don't always feel alone, but I don't like to burden people with this is happening or this is not happening. I just kind of like go through it. I feel like when it comes time for me to burden someone is when I can't do it by myself anymore. Like early on, I drove myself to treatment. I drove myself to radiation because I was able to do so. Yes, my friends asked, you need help, But they have lives, they have kids, they have jobs. I can manage. I'm going to drive. I'm going to be okay. I reserve those times when I absolutely need for somebody to come drive or help me. So can it be lonely along the way? Of course it is. It just think about if you ever had a death in the family for the first 7 days, everybody's there. You know, they're checking on you, making coffee. But after the funeral, everybody goes back to their lives. And you are with your own thoughts, your own fears, your desires to yourself. And that's just what it is, right? And you have to find ways to manage that you don't fall into like a tailspin of you're stuck. And I'm very conscious of managing that. Like if I feel a certain way, I'll do something to boost my mood. And that's how my skincare company, Vivant, came about. Like all the things that I love to do for myself is what I want to offer other people that kind of like take me out of that rut real quick. I told you I'm an instant gratification type of girl. I need something that's going to make me feel good right now. So I'll go give myself a facial. I'll put on my favorite lipstick. I'll get dressed. I'll go outside and just shift the mood because it's not going away. I just have to figure out how to cope with it.
It's an important thing to note and tell the audience. People living with chronic and critical conditions, with multiple myeloma, and I like the word living with it, versus the opposite. This has been a very interesting conversation in that regard. Before I ask my final question, is there anything in addition that you want to share about this journey?
What I want to share about this journey. I think my journey to get me to this point in my life was my cancer diagnosis, but I would urge the audience to think about other pivotal moments in their life that they had to make a shift and what they learned from that, right? Because sometimes it was different. What was different in my situation is I live with it forever, right? But there's times in my life and others when things happen, you made the shift, but then the situation was remedied and you forget the lessons learned from that shift. So I would ask them to think about the time where they had to make a shift. And if it happened again, how would they feel and how would they deal with it? That's something, because oftentimes we forget the lessons we learn. Once we get over the divorce, we find that next new job, we're like, right, until the next thing happens. How do we continue to be resilient even when that situation is remedied and not go into that comfortable place again of nothing is going to happen again?
This is a platform for you to give a message to women of all ages, of all backgrounds, of all cultures. And that kind of says a lot to them, but I'd love to just get your take on that, just to build on it.
There's certain things I believe that happen, no matter your race, your culture. How do you prepare yourself to be resilient and really live the life that you want to live, right? Sometimes that gets lost in us getting married, jobs, careers, like to always come back to who you really intended to be in this world when you graduated from college at 21, right? Diploma in hand, you feel like you can take the world on. And we do sometimes. And sometimes we kind of get stuck in the middle of the road to kind of think about where did you envision yourself and to ask yourself the question, am I where I envision myself to be at whatever age you are right now? And really take stock of who you are to yourself, your community, your kids, and the things that you want to change, take the steps to change it or to work towards it before time runs out or it's just too late. And you be able to live your life without regret, right? Just out of regret, like, oh, maybe I should try to go skydiving. I should learn a second language. I always wanted to go to Italy. Like, just try to live your life the way you want to live it without regret and make the memories that make the inside smile.
Oh, I like that one. Make the memories that make the inside smile. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Matt Butler, and edited by Matt Butler. The music is by Ayla Schaefer. Her song, Rose.